Remember back in grade school when you were just trying to figure out who you were and how to fit in? One day you went in and did something that was a little bit different from the other kids and it drew stares. Remember how embarrassed you felt? Well, stay tuned because in this video, I'm going to share with you 7 things that made me feel embarrassed or uncomfortable after I moved to France. Now, my name is Patricia Brooks. I moved to France in 2018. I live in the south, 20 minutes from the border of Spain. And I moved here because I wanted to have experiences that stretched me, that helped me grow personally. And boy, have I found them. And these 7 things have helped me to do that. So let's go. The first one has to do with a task that everybody has done. And that seems pretty simple, well, at least in your own country. I went grocery shopping one day, and this was in my first month here. And I went up and down the aisles, filled my cart with the things I needed. I got to the produce aisle. I got my fruits and vegetables, bagged them up, and threw them in my cart. Got to the checkout, waited in line a few minutes, put my food, my items on the belt, and the checker started checking them out. Then she got to my fruits and vegetables and she looked at them funny and said, "There are no labels on these." I'm like, "Oh, what? I need labels? Where do I get labels?" And she said, "Oh, you need to weigh them, in the produce aisle." And so fortunately, I didn't have that much produce. I said to her, "Oh, I won't take those then," because a line was forming behind me. And I didn't want to hold up the line by running back and weighing these things. Embarrassing. So turns out here in France and maybe in some other European countries, some of the supermarkets ask that you weigh your fruits and vegetables in that produce aisle. So lesson learned, embarrassing lesson learned. So number 2 has to do with men urinating in public. Probably in my second month here, I was in Perpignan. I was just walking along the street, on my morning walk. Maybe it's 10 or 10:30 in the morning, and it's this side street. It's not a main street, but I'm walking, and I am not expecting to see a man of 60 just standing on the sidewalk peeing, right? He's not trying to conceal himself. He's not, up next to a wall. He's just kind of just doing his thing, like it's normal everyday business. And I was not necessarily embarrassed, maybe more surprised, but I'm like, what's going on here? Over the course of the next few months, I saw this not frequently, but from time to time, more frequently than I think I've ever seen in the United States. So it was surprising to me. Anyway, toward the end of my first year, I was walking and I was passing this kindergarten. It was probably a kindergarten. Kids were probably 5 years old. And it was right before school started for the second half. And there were all of these girls and boys standing, 5 or 6 years old. And there was a mother with her son. And he needed to go to the bathroom. So what did she do? Did she go around to the side of the building and have him do his business? No. She said, "Oh, there's a tree here. There's a little dirt here." She unbuckled his belt, unzipped his pants, and let him do his thing right there in the midst of his classmates, girls and boys alike. And it was normal. I was surprised, but nobody else was. And it helped to give me some understanding as to why, I would see men doing this thing on the street in broad daylight. It's, I think if you are taught that this is the okay thing to do, and even in mixed company, then maybe you're going to just do it and think nothing of it. But for me, it was a surprise. So that's number 2. Number 3 has to do with nudity. I was at the beach in my first year. I was shooting a video of myself and the water behind me. And I got photobombed. there was a woman who was preparing herself to sunbathe nude, or at least topless. And so she's in the background taking off her bathing suit top, and I'm recording a video. I was a bit shocked because, on the beaches in the US, we typically don't do that. But skinny dipping or, nude sunbathing here is a thing, and it's no big deal. And I don't have a problem with it. It was just surprising. Didn't embarrass me, but it surprised me. Quite recently, I went on a hike in the mountains, and there was this mountain lake, and there was a couple who were skinny dipping, and, we're having our lunch, they're skinny dipping, and no big deal. So, the nudity here in France is not a thing that people are shy about. And I will say that this leads to number 4, which is at the doctor's office, at the gynecologist, you are not given a paper robe to cover yourself with as you wait for the doctor to come in. You're just hanging out in your glory. And at the first time I went to the gynecologist here, it was a little bit off-putting. I was like, oh, you just want me to take my clothes off, walk over to the table nude, and lie there. I've been a couple of times since, and I'm getting more comfortable with it. I feel like it's not a bad thing. It was just shocking, maybe a little bit embarrassing too. So those are 4 things that embarrassed or made me feel uncomfortable. Which of those makes you feel the most uncomfortable, if any? Comment below. Now, moving on to number 5. This has to do with my initial attempts to integrate and make friends. I had visited a website called On Va Sortir. This is like a meetup site, and I'd found an activity I wanted to do. This was laughter yoga, and this was in my first 6 weeks. And so I got on the bus, found this out-of-the-way place where it was being held, which was a challenge in itself. And I got there, and I was kind of cheering myself on. Patricia, you're shy. However, you're going to go up and you're going to introduce yourself. You're not going to stand all by yourself. And so that's what I did. I mustered the courage to do this. And so I went over, bonjour, je m'appelle Patricia, and nothing but blank stares. Crickets. Here I am, having mustered the courage to do this thing, and nobody smiled or even, shared what their name was. Well, it turns out that here in France, that's just not what you do. I think I read in the Bonjour effect that, giving your name is kind of a personal thing. And so giving your name is not something that you just do like you would introduce yourself in the United States. I don't know how true that is, but in that situation, it felt like it was true. And it was very, very uncomfortable. So that's number 5. Number 6 and number 7 have to do with language and my ability to speak it. Number 6 just has to do with the general discomfort I felt initially trying to communicate effectively in French, even though I'd spent years before my move doing Pimsleur method religiously every single day. And that was really helpful because I had a great base of the language. I could understand slow spoken French. I could communicate when I wasn't nervous or anxious or feeling really out of my element, which was most of my first year. And what that does is being nervous or anxious or feeling out of your element is that your brain doesn't work as clearly as possible because it feels like you are in threat mode, fight or flight mode even sometimes. And so when that happens, your brain shuts down and you just can't think clearly. And so I found myself fumbling through conversations and not being able to find the right words that I knew, words that were at the tip of my tongue, but I just couldn't get them. And that was not necessarily embarrassing. It was a bit uncomfortable and a bit frustrating because I knew in my head what I wanted to say, but it wasn't coming out. And that works in the same way when somebody is speaking to you, saying something that you would normally understand, But in your head, you're like, oh, what are they saying? And you kind of panic. And so that was something that embarrassed me because I knew I could do better, but also frustrated me because I knew I could do better. And number 7 is something that happened recently. It happened maybe 6 or 7 months ago. And it was in the middle of the night or early Sunday morning around 4 a.m. I was awakened, from my sleep by these moans and these cries in the night. Now, there is a nightclub not too far from my apartment. And sometimes on Sunday mornings, the people who are going home are, loud and still having their fun. Well, this was different though, because it was moans and I heard it, every 10 or 15 minutes, and it was cries, and it was something that I felt was like not good. It wasn't just somebody who was drunk. I felt like somebody may have needed help, and it was in the middle of the winter. So I thought, if they're out there, maybe they're exposed to the cold and maybe they need help. So I heard the moans, and they'd stop. I hear the moans, then they stop. I heard the moans. Finally, I said, I can't lie here anymore. This is painful. So I have to call for help. Well, what number to call? 117, 118, 112? So that was the first embarrassing thing, or maybe not embarrassing, but frustrating thing for me, was that I didn't know what number to call. In the United States, 911 will do the trick. But here there are multiple ones. And so when I first called, I called one. They said, oh, you need to call this other number, right? They didn't patch me through or anything. It was just like, oh, you called the wrong number. Then when I got to the right number, it's 4:30, 4:45 in the morning. I'm nervous because you don't call emergency every day. It's the middle of the morning and I'm speaking in a foreign language, and trying to communicate that I think somebody is in need of help, and I didn't do it well. I think the operator thought that I was drunk or I was playing a prank, because I was pretty incoherent. And it was really frustrating to me that I was not able to advocate forcefully enough to get somebody out here to help this person. Now, the woman did say, and I was annoyed with myself that I didn't just speak in English, because maybe they had somebody there who could understand. But anyway, long story short, at the end of the call, she says, oh, if we have somebody available, we'll send somebody out there. 2 hours later, I woke up, looked out my window, and there is an emergency vehicle. There's a woman who lives across the street, and a man sitting in a chair with a blanket over his head and around his body. So there was somebody who needed help. Obviously, it wasn't dire help, but it was the middle of the winter, and it was a cold night. And I felt horrible that I was not able to help. And so it's a lesson learned to know your emergency numbers, know some key words and phrases, and don't be afraid to speak your native language so they get that, or tell them that you're not a native speaker and that this is serious. This is not a joke. So that if you are in need of help, or if somebody else is in need of help, and you're living in a foreign country that speaks a language different from your own, you can help. You can not feel like I felt. So those are 7 things that made me feel embarrassed. Which of those can you relate to most? Comment below. Now, moving abroad is not easy. It pushes you out of your comfort zone. You're going to have embarrassing moments just like the ones I've had. And it might be nice to have a group of people that you can work with, communicate with, connect with, share your experiences with, who are going through the same thing. I have a program that does just that. It helps you prepare for your move, but also has a community for you to engage with on group coaching and mentoring calls. Now, if this sounds like something that would be interesting to you, well, then let's have a conversation. I'm going to put a link to my calendar in the description where you can find time for us to talk and see where you are, and if this might be something that is right for you. Now, if you found this video helpful, insightful, please share it with friends and give it a thumbs up. That's all I have for you today. I will see you again next time. Bye for now.